Okay. Hello, hello, hello. I don't know if I'm live yet. Sorry, it took me a minute to turn all this stuff on, but I think you're. Hold on one second. Turn this off. Okay, I think I'm live. Hi, everybody. This is Mike here, doing my first live stream on YouTube. I hope this is YouTube. Um, So I'm Mike. I'm the one behind MojoGrip and all the videos that you all have been watching. And as I said in my last post, I really do appreciate everybody that supported this channel. It's grown exponentially, honestly, in the last hi man, in the last 4 months. So, and that's honestly why I'm doing this live stream because I want to get to know you guys a little bit more, and hopefully you get to know me a little bit more. Hey Keegan, thank you for tuning in. Okay, so first things first, moving forward, everything Mojo Grip, as I said in my last video, I definitely want to dedicate a lot more time to this channel. And not only because you guys have been just awesome sharing all the content, but also I'm having some fun. This may be one of the best things that I've done in my life. Just going about checking out airplanes, flying them if I can, and also just talking about cars and motorcycles as my passion. So moving forward, I'm going to be putting more time into this channel and hopefully be able to bring you guys a lot of more awesome content, better quality videos, hopefully. Okay, so that's that. And so if you are on Patreon, first, I want to give a shout out to Craig. Craig is the first person to contribute to my Patreon, so thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And like I said, guys, only $1 is the minimum, and that dollar goes a long way. So I have a list of questions here. Let me just pull up the document in front of me. So over the last few weeks, I've gotten questions either through the comments, or I have some of you email me or inbox me through YouTube and ask questions about either want to start your pilot journey, or want to find the best schools and whatnot. And if you ever saw my video, or if you haven't seen my video where I talked about my own experience and my costs, I encourage you to go watch that video first because there's actually a lot of good information there. Hey guys, I see a lot more people joining the chat box here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. So as I was saying, if you haven't seen that video regarding costs, I would encourage you to check it out because I actually talk about a lot of stuff there. And you can also pick out things to look out for whenever you're starting your journey. But with that said, let me start with the questions here. And I'm going to try to pick them just randomly. And please do ask me questions in the chat boxes as well. If you have something on your mind, let me know. And while you have me here on live stream, I would definitely try my best to answer. Okay, so the first question here is, I want to start flying, but don't know where to start or what I need. So the first thing is you have the dream. And like a lot of us, like myself, I wanted to do it for literally 20 years. I was 6 or 7 when I first had the itch to fly an airplane, and I did not get my license until I was 26 years old. So for almost 20 years, it was just there, and I never thought it would be something that I would do. So for you, if you're just starting out, honestly, it depends on where you are. I can't speak on other countries, but I know that here in the U.S., aviation is such a privilege for us. Having traveled to other countries, and even other countries that come here each year. So you have some pilots come to the United States just to fly, really. So we have some of the best rules and freedom here to be able to fly as civilians. So if you are here in the United States or around the world, the first thing I would say is go for a demo flight. Really, it's as simple as that. A lot of us may have been in commercial airlines or gotten on bigger jets, and you don't know what that feels like. when you're in a much smaller airplane. So you may be in a smaller airplane. Sorry guys if I'm sniffling because I got a lot of the pollen outside. So anyway, ignore me sniffling my nose. But as I was saying, if you spend time flying in a bigger jet, the feeling is very different from when you transition from that to a smaller airplane. So my first advice is if you want to learn how to fly, go for a demo flight. And out here in most states, a demo flight usually will cost you around $100. Let me just look at the chat real quick because I see a lot more people coming in. Canadian, keep it up, man. Oh wow, thank you guys so much. For the person who asked, Abdullah asked if he could come to the U.S. to take flight lessons. I'm sure you can. I don't see any reason why you cannot. But I would definitely check on the FAA site. But I'm pretty sure you can, as long as you have you can legally be here forever long that you want to be here. There's no reason why you can't start flight lesson. And there is no legal, I believe, to start flying. It's actually easier to start flying than to even learn how to drive legally. In terms of legally, like to learn how to drive, there's certain documents that are required. Whereas to fly, you just need to find a flight school and go about it. So again, as I was saying, go for your demo flight. It will cost you $100 in most states. And the reason why you want to do that, honestly, is you want to know how it feels. Usually when you go for your demo flight, they give you, like whoever's flying with you will give you the stick or the yoke and tell you, you're in control of the airplane, and they'll show you a few things and just see how you feel doing that. If you feel great and you're like, man, I can see myself doing this for a long time, then once you get back on planet Earth on the ground, then you can ask more questions. Okay, so that's the first thing I would ask you to do. And I'm going to read a little bit more of the chat here. With a driver's license, I believe so. Now, I don't want to, let me look that up and get back to you. So somebody asked if you could fly. Again, the same person asking if they could fly in the United States. Like I said, I don't think you need, legally, you probably just need a driver's license. And you don't, to start flight lesson, I believe you have to be 16 to get a private pilot license, 16 or 17 years old. So also it depends on what license that you're trying to get. So there are different classes of pilot license that you can get. I believe the first one is a sports pilot license and a private pilot license. And then there's commercial. And then there is so there are classes of license, and then there's also ratings. So again, you start from sports, you can go up to a private, and then go for your commercial. And within those different classes, you can also get like your instrument rating, ATP rating, which is air transport, which is if you're flying for commercial airlines and things like that. And I'm sure there are also medical requirements that you'd have to get done for those. Okay, so that is that. Let me see what's next here. I want to start. Man, you guys asked so many questions. I'm going to try to pick out the simplest ones. Okay, so somebody else asked me from a forum. This wasn't through YouTube. They asked, I've completed my written exam and I have my student pilot certificate and I started training, but I have a lot of issues with my training and also weather. And right now I am extremely discouraged to continue. What do I do? Excuse me. So that's a loaded question right there. So for anyone who has started their pilot journey already, as much as I love to share aviation and becoming a pilot, I personally would say that it's one of the hardest things that I did. Hardest in terms of my time commitment and also having to go through, the training and then getting to the exam phase and things like that. So one of the things that you're going to struggle with if you're not prepared like I wasn't, is patience. So weather is probably the most important factor in all of your training, because weather is what's going to govern the airspace that you're going to be flying in. So what I recommend to people first is, if you're in a location where, like here in the United States, we have different seasons. We have, you got the summer, spring, winter. And here during the spring, like in the state of Georgia where I'm at, it rains. It rains a lot. Okay, so if I know that here in the state of Georgia, from say March all the way to June or July, it's going to be raining a lot, I probably would not try to fly in those periods. Okay, so if you started your training early in the year, you're going to run into that weather season where it's going to be raining a lot. So my recommendation is, if you started your pilot journey already, take breaks. And again, it's a little counterintuitive because I always say try to fly as much as possible. But when you run into a season where the weather is not so nice, the best thing you could do is maybe take a break from flying and just focus on your ground. So when you're doing your pilot training, you're gonna have two different training. One is in the cockpit where you learn how to fly, and then the second is going to be on the ground where your instructor or whoever you're getting help from, gives you the knowledge that you need in aviation. And on ground, you're going to cover so many things. You're going to cover weather. You're going to cover legal things that you need to be aware of. You're going to cover your airplane by itself. You have to learn everything that you need to know about the airplane that you're flying. So there's so many things that you need to cover on ground anyway. So if you're running into an issue with weather, what I would say is take a break from actual flying and save your money. Okay, the average cost to fly per hour is 150 to 200, and sometimes to 300, because again, you're renting the airplane and you're also paying instructor per hour. So I would save that few $100 per hour and just focus on my ground. I'd rather pay my instructor maybe $50 or $70 an hour, whatever they charge, and ask them to go over ground with me. So that's the first thing I would tell that person, is to take a break from flying, focus on ground. And again, the second thing is, like I said, you have to be ahead of the season, the weather also. So I would take a break from flying and stay ahead of weather. And next question. Okay, this is very similar. So another person asked, I have over 170 hours in 4 years. I've done 2 practical check rides and failed, and I am completely frustrated. Okay, so here's another similar question. These are people who already started their training, and this person now has logged over 170 hours, which, again, most pilots actually get done. Usually when you start your training, I think you should be done between 70 and 100 hours. When you're going over 100 hours, then you need to reevaluate what you're doing. Either you're not having the right commitment to the training, or maybe your school is doing something that they shouldn't be doing. Okay, so always keep that in mind. So for this person, they have over 170 hours in a 4-year span. And then some parts of the question that I'm not mentioning is that they also tell me that they run a business, so putting more time into their training is a problem for them. And this person also has gone through 5 different instructors. Okay, so I can already see a lot of things that are wrong with this. When you start your training, okay, you know what? Let me actually, without even going to that question, let me say this. Before you start your training, as if you're not a pilot yet and you want to start, the best thing you could do when you're looking for a school, one, maybe find a school close by. And remember what I said, find something that's only about 20 minutes driving distance or 30 minutes max. If it's above 30 minutes, then you're going to be frustrated at some point once you start training. So I would say find somewhere that's within 20 minutes of driving from your home or work wherever you're starting from to go to that place to train. That's one. The second thing, when you get to the school, do this. Ask a lot of questions, but the most important question you should ask is whenever you sign up, tell them to put you with an instructor, meaning a CFI that's not going to the commercial airlines. Okay. So to explain that, whenever most schools hire CFIs that are only there to build some time, and once they've built, say, 1,000 or 1,200 hours, which I think is the requirement to go fly for the airlines, they just leave. They don't care if you're in the middle of your training or if you're preparing for check ride. They just leave once they're done. So the best thing you can do for yourself in the beginning is when you get there, ask them, please don't put me in with a CFI that's just here temporarily. I want to be put in with somebody that's been here instructing for at least 3 or 4 years. Okay? So if you do that, then most likely you're going to be fitted with someone that instructing is what they do. That's their career, that's their job. They've been doing it for years. They're not just there to, build some time and then transition to the airlines. They're there because that's what they do. So that's the most important question, I think. Or again, based on my experience, that's something I definitely would have asked them to do. So if you're just starting out, make sure you tell them that you want someone who has been with the school for a few years, not just someone who just got there and literally within a year go fly for the airlines. Because that's what happened to me. My first instructor was there around the same time I got there, and he was done building his hours before I even got to my check ride, and he left. And then what happened with me was, okay, I'm reading someone here. I disagree. It's actually better to fly with my Okay, so Joe Williams says, I disagree. And I love this. I love that we can have a conversation. Joe Williams says, I disagree. It's actually better to fly with multiple CFIs. Otherwise, you tend to pick up their bad habits. No pilot flights perfect. Can I ask you a question, Joe? Are you a pilot already? Are you a CFI or just a private pilot or a student? If you can answer that. Which are you? Okay, so you're a private pilot. Okay, great. So you've been through the training phase. And did you have multiple CFIs when you trained to become a pilot, or you just went through one? I'm gonna wait for Joe to answer real quick so I can get to my next one. Okay, so while Joe is thinking about that answer, okay, so Joe Williams says he went through 4 different instructor at the school. So here is I love that we're having this conversation, but I do disagree that you should have more than one CFI. I went through 2. All right, I went through 2, and if I had my way, I would have stuck with just one person. And once I was done, now guys, remember that when you're 15 years ago, a lot has changed. So when you're getting your pilot's license, think of your private pilot license as just the beginning. It's really your license to learn. Okay? Your private pilot license is really your license to start learning. Once you get your private pilot license, that's when the world opens up to you, and then you can learn so much more about flying. But while you're getting your first license, which is either a sports or private pilot license, I would encourage you to try and stick to one instructor. Now, I say that from experience because when my first instructor left, okay, first he left just right before I was right in the middle of me training for my check ride. And then they fit me with another guy. Now, this other person did help me get to my check ride phase and pass my check ride, but he did everything completely different. And in some ways, when I flew with him, I felt embarrassed by some of the things that I wasn't, to his standard, I wasn't doing right. And I would tell him, but this is how the first instructor showed me how to do it. Okay. And that's the problem you're going to have when you have different instructors. One, you're going to deal with different personalities. And two, you're going to deal with different ways of doing things. My second instructor had a completely different way of flying than my first instructor. My first instructor, he's a more casual guy. He'll allow you to make some mistakes or whatnot. And in some way, he might let you get away with too many things that now when I look back on it, he should have said something about it. Whereas my second instructor, he was completely military in terms of, if the books doesn't say it, then you're not doing it. He does everything exactly according to the books and how you're supposed to do it. Okay, and that's one of the challenges you're gonna run into. I'm still reading Joe's Williams comment here. Okay, good. And see, that's one of the challenges you're going to run into if you go through different instructors. Now, from a learning standpoint, it could be a good thing because you're learning from different people. But guess what? When you're training for your first license, you're like a baby. You're like a baby when it comes to aviation, and it will be frustrating. I promise you, you're going to get frustrated. I'm actually thinking about doing a video with my wife so she can tell you some of the things that she had to deal with when I was during my training, because there was a lot of times where I just came home and just completely frustrated, completely discouraged, um, because of the different personalities that I had to deal with, and the fact that I had to relearn a lot of things literally fresh. So it felt like I spent all this thousands of dollars learning from one person, only to spend even more thousand or however many thousands of dollars to learn the same thing from another instructor. So to me, that's the wall you're going to run into if you go through different CFIs. So again, I go back to my point and say you should tell the school or encourage the school to put you in with an instructor that's what they do. They're not going to go and leave you in the middle of your training and go to the airliners. Okay. So that's that. And then moving on to the next thing, uh, within that question, the second thing I would say to the person who asked that question is, look, when you started your training, one of the biggest things that you have to account for is your time. Okay, if you are, because obviously aviation can be expensive, and some people don't have the luxury to spend that kind of money or get a loan for it. So a lot of times, people who learn how to fly is maybe someone who has a good paying job or they run a business. And speaking from experience, when you are either one of those two people, your time is everything. So when you're training, make sure you dedicate enough time to your training. If you go to, say you come in today, you fly, and then you go home and you go straight to work and you forget about your training, and then you come back maybe 2 days later and you didn't like study or try to catch up on what you learned the last time you trained, you're going to have to relearn stuff. So my next recommendation is make sure you have enough time in your hands to dedicate to training. If you don't, I would honestly save your money and wait till your schedule is freed up. Okay. So those are the things I would recommend to you. Before you start, make sure you have enough time. If you don't, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot if you start and then you have to fight to move things around for yourself. Okay. So that is that. Now, the next question, I have somebody who asked me, should I go for a sports pilot license or a private pilot license? I don't know the best way to answer this, honestly. And I wish maybe somebody in the chat box may have. Okay, so Keegan says go for private. Okay, so this, believe it or not, I asked this question when I was starting my training as well. Because when you think of the cost, so your sports license, which also allows you to fly, it's significantly cheaper. I think it's about $3,000 to $4,000 cheaper, depending on, again, where you are or what aircraft you're flying in. So the cost alone is more attractive to get a sports pilot license. But guess what? Excuse me. When a sports pilot license, at least in the United States, there's a lot of limitations. Okay, for example, you can't fly. You can only fly VFR conditions, meaning if it's dark outside, you can't fly at night. I don't believe so. You can't fly after a certain time. And also, I don't know if you're limited. I believe you are also limited to the type of aircraft that you can fly. So with a sports license, you can fly, but you're limited to the type of aircraft. It has to be a light sport aircraft. Um, and also, you're limited to the time of the day that you can fly. I don't believe there's any limitations to how far you can go. You can fly the whole country if you want to. I could be wrong, but I believe that is the case. But you are limited in terms of the type of aircraft and also the time of the day. And I'm sure there are other limitations to having a sports pilot license. Whereas with a private pilot license, again, as I said, it's literally your license to transition into just about every other ladder when it comes to aviation. With a private pilot license, you're free to fly. Well, you're limited to a single engine, right? Airplane. But from a private pilot license, you can easily get, say, an IFR rating. You can get your commercial from there. You can basically climb up the ladder as much as you want. And I know a few pilots where they have so many ratings and they're not flying commercial. They don't have a commercial license, but they have all their ratings so they can fly for themselves. So my thing is this: if you're flying just for fun, and a lot of people do that, if you recall my video with Adam with the flight design, he's an older guy where he has the money and all he wants to do is just fly for fun. He calls his aviation career just chasing burgers. So all he does is hop from one place to another during the weekends and go have a burger somewhere. So if you're that guy where you just want to feel the thrill of flying, then a sports pilot license, by all means, to me, that's your best choice. But if you want to fly, say, cross country, if your mission is you want to take people flying and you want to travel longer distance, or you want to fly in the clouds at some point, then I would say your private pilot license is probably the best bet. I chose the private pilot license because I want to, again, climb up the ladder. And not necessarily to go the commercial route, but just to have as much rating as I possibly can or that I'm comfortable with. So if you were to ask me, just my own biased opinion is go for your private pilot license. So I agree with Keegan. You should go for a private pilot license rather than a sports license. Let me just read some of the chat box here to make sure I'm not missing any questions. That's my point. Okay, so I'm gonna pick a few questions here. So HJ Aviation asks, can you train on a high performance complex plane? And can you learn on a tail dragger? Honestly, the first two, high performance and complex, technically you can, okay? And the reason why I say technically you can is because when I think of Cirrus, so Cirrus train a lot of their pilots. A lot of their pilots are brand new. They're literally people who have the money and just said, I want to learn how to fly. And they jump straight to flying a high performance airplane like a Cirrus. All of Cirrus aircraft, from the SR-20 to the 22 to the light jet they have, they're all high performance. And oops, excuse me 1 second. I need to cover my light here. Okay, some technical difficulties there. So to answer that question, I believe you can train in a high performance. Now, a complex airplane. So what makes an airplane complex? I believe you have to have retractable gear. You have to have flaps, I believe. Was it flaps? And I know there are at least 3 or 4 things that makes an airplane complex. So I will put a question mark still with complex, but high performance, definitely. But will I recommend that you train in a high performance airplane? Hell no, don't do it. Don't do it for your own safety, honestly. And I remember I put up a video a while back where I talked about the Cirrus parachute system. And a lot of people had a lot of things to say about that video. And really, the point I was trying to bring up in that video, or some of the point I brought out in that video, is the reason why you had a lot of fatal accidents with the Cirrus brand early on when the SR22 first became a thing. The reason why you have a lot of fatal crashes is because a lot of the pilots were relatively new pilots, okay? And they're new pilots in the sense that they didn't learn in a slower airplane like a 150 or 172. They just jumped directly into a really fast machine like a Cirrus. And that's why a lot of people may not consider that a Cirrus is a high performance. If you have an engine that's over 200 horsepower, you're flying a high performance airplane. So my answer to you is yes, you can learn a high performance, but I don't think I would recommend that you do, because again, just for safety reasons, I think it's better if you crawl first, learn in a more forgiving airplane, a slower airplane like everybody else, and then climb up. If you build some time, say in a slower airplane, and then you can always transition from something slower to high performance, something much faster. But if you're jumping just as an average person to learn how to fly in a high performance, I will not recommend it. Now, excuse me, can you learn on a tail dragger? Tail dragger, I believe, is an additional rating that you can get. I don't know if you can necessarily learn directly or jump right into a tail dragger, but you guys can correct me. Someone who's more knowledgeable can correct me. But I believe tail dragger is just a rating, a simple rating that you can add onto your tab once you start flying. But I'm not sure if you can learn it in a tail dragger though. So that's my answer to that question. Yes, you can learn it in a high performance, but I would not recommend it at all. Okay, haven't seen many. Keegan says the restrictions on sports pilot license are crushing. Yes, they can be. Again, it depends on who you are and what your mission is. Okay. Used to fun. Yes, in my heart. Okay, so HJ Aviation asks another question about stalls. So during your training, one of the procedures that you're gonna go over is stall. And yes, as a student pilot or someone who's trying that procedure for the first time, you will definitely freak out. You will freak out because uh, someone says SR20, not 200. I believe the SR20, even the I believe the newest ones are 200 horsepower or more. I could be wrong, but I'll double check on that. But I believe the SR20 is high performance. But I'll double check on that and get back to you. But speaking back to stalls, so as a student, one of the procedures you're going to go through is stalls. And when you stall an airplane, again, a stall is when you exceed your angle of attack, and that's the point where the airplane is no longer able to fly. So when you stall an airplane, is basically completely interrupting the air that's flowing over the wings. And when you're in that airplane and you pull that stick up, first your wings are gonna sort of feel like they're breaking off, and you might feel like you're going this way, or you can go completely nosedive down. So it's a scary feeling at first, but once you practice it over and over and over again, it makes me laugh because I remember my first time. I freaked out a little bit too, but once you practice it over and over again, it becomes a thing. It just becomes a procedure where if your instructor tells you, okay, induce a stall for me, so you know what to do. But the most important lesson with a stall is how to recover from one. Obviously, the stall is not the issue. How do you recover from a stall is the main lesson that you're being taught there. So to answer your question, how do you get used to it? Just like you get used to flying, do it over and over and over again. The first time you might freak out, but you'll get used to it once you practice it more and more. So it shouldn't be an issue. Okay, good. Thank you. Nick helps me add. So we were talking about a complex airplane earlier. So another feature that a complex airplane has is constant speed prop. A constant speed prop is like It's like driving a manual gear car, which you have to shift gear. So with a constant speed prop, is basically the pilot is able to change the angle of the blade of the prop, and you kind of play with that depending on what altitude or where you're flying. So that's one of the features I believe an airplane has to have to be considered a complex airplane. Okay, moving on. Thank you, Joe Williams, helping me answer that. So you guys can also look in the chat box as I'm going through them. A lot of the questions are being answered there as well. Okay, great. Yes. So yeah, thank you for posting that. So yes, an SR20 is also a high performance because it exceeds 200 horsepower for the engine. Okay, and I don't see any more questions here, so I will move on to the next question here. So someone actually asked this today or yesterday that I added this question. They want to know how much does it cost to get in a private pilot license or a sports pilot license. Honestly, how much that is going to cost you in terms of the financial part is sort of up to you. But the average, what I was told, believe it or not, what I was told when I first started my training was a sports pilot will cost me between 6 and 7,000, and a private pilot license will cost me between $8,000 and $10,000. But guess what? I ended up spending close to $30,000 to get my private pilot license. So I would say if you're getting a sports license, put in mind $8,000 for a sports pilot license. And when I say $8,000, you probably want to train in a cheaper or more affordable airplane, like maybe the old Cessnas or Pipers. If you train in one of the newer modern airplanes like Sports Cruiser, for example. So I was in LA just a month ago, and I wanted to go fly in a Sports Cruiser, and the renting cost for that airplane is $160. Okay, $160. So that rent, that's even higher than what I paid to learn in a Diamond DA-40. So if you're gonna go for a sports pilot license and you budget between $7,000 and $8,000, you definitely want to chill with more of the older Pipers or say a Cessna 150 or 172. Those will cost you significantly less than if you train in the newer model airplanes like the Sports Cruiser or even the Flight Design. I know the school that I trained, they had a Flight Design that was $90 an hour. So you can find those and pay significantly lower per hour to rent the airplane. So sports license, I would definitely between 6 and 8. For your private pilot license, now some of you might disagree with me, but I would say have at least $15,000 to get your private pilot license. If you budget say between 8 or 10, like I was told, chances are you're going to spend more than that. Okay. So I would say to have a healthy budget or number to look at, I would say between $13,000 and $15,000. And the same thing goes. The airplane that you choose to fly or learn in is going to affect your costs. And also, hopefully, you're able to dedicate enough time to your training. If you go in and out with your training, then it's going to cost you more in the long run. And remember that sometimes you may look at, okay, this airplane costs $20 an hour more, or this instructor costs $20 an hour more. Sometimes it's actually better to pay more for the airplane and the instructor at a school than go to somewhere where it's cheaper. And instead of you getting a better deal, your training is a lot longer, and then the cost just adds up. So my point is, your costs will also depend on the school that you train in. Okay, if you choose a good school, and again, what I said earlier about your CFI, if you stick with one instructor and don't go with different instructors, chances are you will get done within those budgets that I mentioned. But again, a lot of things can affect your training, but weather is one of the most important factors that you have to consider with your training. So sports, 7 to 8, private pilot license, just double that for a private pilot license. And I'm gonna leave it at that. And some of you, honestly, if you have any of those licenses, please share in the chat box and let people know. You guys know in my story, I definitely overspent to get my license. But if I had a do-over, I don't think it should cost you more than $13,000 to $15,000 to get your private pilot license. Okay, so moving on to the next question. Which airplane should I train in? I feel like I've sort of mentioned that already. Sometimes it could be where you are. If the closest school to you only has certain types of airplanes, then you may be limited to that. Now, in terms of safety, just based on my knowledge, I know that the Cessnas and the Piper Cherokees are pretty awesome airplanes to train in. They're very forgiving aircraft, and they have a track record. Some of these airplanes are older than all of us, and they have a good track record as a good trainer. So I would recommend a Cessna 150 is a good trainer, 172 also, and more so the Piper Cherokee is a great airplane to train in. Now, if you're willing to, or if you prefer to train in a more modern airplane, my biased opinion is to get into the Diamond Star. That airplane is, the reason I chose it honestly is because when I read the safety record for that particular model, it's amazing when you compare the safety record of the Diamond Star to just about any other civil aviation aircraft out there. It has a really awesome safety record. And one key feature about the Diamond DA-40 is, with all of the accidents that's happened with that aircraft, I haven't read once that the airplane caught on fire. Okay, now you guys might think about that and don't think it's not a big deal. So if we paint a scenario, say an airplane has a crash landing and the pilot survived, right? So one key thing is to get on the ground safely. Another key thing is to get out of that airplane safely. If you say you were able to land and you're okay, but you're not able to get out of the airplane and the airplane catches on fire, then that could result into a fatal situation that we don't want. So, and a DA-40 has never had that happen before, but I can't say the same for other aircrafts. There's been fire, there's been other crashes, and the DA-40 I know is an extremely forgiving airplane. I've had situations in that airplane where it was hard for me to stall it. Really, it was hard for me to stall. I mean, if you pull the stick long enough, it will stall, but it's one of those airplanes that refuses to stall at some point. And also, it's very balanced in the air. It's very forgiving. Even as a new pilot, I remember some of my early solo flights. I knew that I didn't do things perfectly when I was by myself in that airplane. Or like I would get home and watch some of my videos. I remember one particular video where I flew by myself to either San Bernardino or French Valley. And during my takeoff, I forgot to push the, was it the prop? Yeah, it was the prop. I forgot to push the prop all the way to the highest, and I was still able to take off fine. In another airplane, that could have been something that goes bad. So I know that the Diamond DA-40 is a very forgiving airplane. Again, it's probably going to cost you a little bit more per hour, but if you can afford it, that's an airplane I would recommend. But sometimes it costs even cheaper than a lot of the light sport aircraft. Like I said, I wanted to rent the sports cruiser at one point, and they wanted to charge me $160 per hour for it. So, all right, every man is home. So next question. Okay, I have a few more questions here. I'm also going to check the chat box. So a question is, am I a CFI? No, I am not a CFI. I don't have a license or the legal documentation that says Mike is a CFI. I am not, although I do. If you watch my channel, I just spread my love and passions based on things that I know about airplanes and flying in general. And, I would say even through my videos, I've definitely messed up on a few things that people will correct me on. and that's okay with me. I'm open to criticism and whatnot. So I'm not a CFI, but based on my knowledge as a private pilot, I'm sure there's things that I can share with you guys, or some people who are aspiring to be a pilot. Next question: do you plan on going commercial? So for me personally, I wanted to go all the way through commercial, but there's this thing that happened called marriage. I I got married 2 years ago, and as you know, once you get married, you're not by yourself, so you can't make all the decisions you make. You have to sort of talk to your spouse about it. And my wife was not interested in me going commercial, and these are the reasons. So if you are someone who is aspiring to go through the commercial uh, route, or go say fly for the airliners, here's some of the things to consider. Okay, one, okay, to get all the way to commercial, you got to add some more tap to that. It's because it's going to cost you more money. Okay, so to get to commercial is probably going to cost you a lot more, a few more $1,000 to get all those ratings to get you there. And also you need to build hours. Again, that's why you have a lot of CFIs build their hours through the flight schools and then transition to airliners. But the main reason why my wife did not want me to go that route is because of the time. So a lot of pilots, when you become a commercial pilot, you're constantly out there. You're almost never home. Okay, so if you have a family, you're not gonna have time for your family, because you have to wake. Some pilots wake up 2 a.m. in the morning because they have to go fly somewhere and be somewhere else at 7 a.m. in the morning. So the main thing for me was the time, and when I talked to my wife about raising a family and all that, it didn't mesh together. So if I want to have a family and have a stable home, to go commercial route will kind of disrupt that, because I'm not going to be here in person with my family. So for those of you who are considering that route, those are things you have to think about. And at first also, you're not making a lot of money. You're not making a lot of money with a commercial license. At first, I believe the starting rate is 25 to $30,000 a year, and then you probably have to be in the business another 3 to 5 years before you start seeing some significant raise in your salary. At least this is what I've heard talking to other commercial pilots. I could be wrong. So for you to get all that investment, all that thousands of dollars that you've invested, it's going to take a while. And until you get to the actual piloting command of a big jet, that's when you may start making the big money. But initially, your base salary is like 25 to 30,000, and then you climb up from there. And a lot of times, you're gonna be on the road. You're gonna be sleeping in hotels. You're not gonna be sleeping on your own bed. So those are the things that I would consider going commercial. And so for me, I decided not to go that route. And besides, I like my life as just having the freedom to be able to fly whenever I choose to. And if I go commercial, somebody else choose for me when I fly. So those are the things that I considered. Okay, now let me go through a few more questions here. Let's see. So land a part of flying. Okay, I see conversations already happening here between other people. So I'll leave you guys to it then. So back to the sheet. Okay, so somebody asked me why am I not flying frequently anymore. So if you see early on my channel, I have a lot of flight videos of myself, and some of them is through my training. Some of them is once I got my license and I flew some solo flights. So a few things have happened since I got my license. Okay, one, I moved. I moved completely. I trained in California, in Los Angeles, and I moved out of Los Angeles to now a new state. And as I'm speaking to you right now, I'm literally still trying to plant my feet here and get to know some of the aviation community and pilot community here. But the main reason why I haven't been flying as much is one, the cost. Okay, it's not a cheap hobby, or it's not a cheap trait or skill. You have to pay to rent an airplane, or if you own an airplane, you have to pay for that too. But for me, my personal goal, I want to fly my own airplane. I don't want to rent anybody's airplane anymore, because again, when I think of my experience getting my license, where I felt like the school just milked dollars out of me in rental fees just because they could. I That feeling came with me where I'm like, okay, if I'm going to, because for me, when I jump back into flying, I want it to be a long term thing. I don't want it to be something where I just do it and then I take a break and then go back to it. And I want it to be something I do for the rest of my life. So right now, my goal is just to save, and I'm saving to be able to buy my own airplane one day, or build my own airplane one day. And once that happens, you're going to be seeing a lot more flight videos from me. But in the meantime, if I go review an airplane, hopefully get some flight time, or if I take short trips with the wife, we may fly to places that are not so far away. So I will still have some flight videos, but not a lot of them. Not until I'm able to buy my own aircraft. Okay, I believe there's one more question here. Okay, the last question on my sheet is, can you review the Vans RV8 and the Velocity aircraft? So when it comes to airplane reviews, I reach out to a lot of people on a weekly basis. This week alone, I've reached out to several pilots and several aircraft owners, and I've also reached out to builders. So here's how it works, and I'll tell you from my most recent experience. When I traveled to LA this past month, okay, I literally reserved seven different appointments when I traveled to LA. So in my books, I had in mind that I was going out there and I was gonna get to check out 7 different aircraft. But guess what? When I got there, oh shoot, this light scares the crap out of me. I'm gonna take this thing off so it's not. So when I got to LA, out of that 7 aircraft appointment that I had, 5 of them canceled. Okay. So I ended up being out there and only reviewing 2 airplanes. So now when I think of my success rates with appointments, it's about 30% right now. So to answer that question, yes, I have reached out to people that owns RV8 or that are selling one. And I actually, believe it or not, I was supposed to review an RV14 this past Monday. And I'm not gonna say everything that happened with that, but the person that I was dealing with, they basically called me and canceled last minute. So you're gonna deal with different personality. Generally, a lot of pilots have been very generous with their time, and people who just ask me to come review their stuff. So I'm very grateful for that. But then I run into some people who are just last minute. They just cancel for whatever reason. They just cancel in the last minute. So I will get to the RV8, and the Velocity is actually not here in Georgia. So that's something that I have to travel out of state for. And believe it or not, I've already reached out to them. And once I get a yes, I will go down there and try to review that airplane. And see, and speaking of reviews, and it's a way to actually close this session, that's why I set up the Patreon page, because it's to help me offset some of the costs. So until now, I've been traveling out of pocket. Okay. I've been traveling to try and get more content up. And so moving forward, if I'm going to be traveling a lot more, it means I'm going to be spending a lot more money to travel out of state. Or if it's a driving distance, hell, even if it's 3 hours driving, I might do it. I might go and drive 3 hours to review an airplane. But I am reaching out to everyone that I can. And definitely, for sure, just watch out. Look out for future videos. I've got a few things in the works right now. And if you are in the US, please come to Oshkosh. I'm going to my first air ventures this year, and I would love to meet some of you guys. So if you are here in the States and you're able to make that trip, definitely come on down. And I know there's going to be everyone is going to be there in terms of airplane manufacturers. And the airplane that I'm most looking forward to is the Pipistrel Panthera. You guys, I've shared videos on my channel for, okay, AG Aviation is 60 miles from Oshkosh. You are one lucky bastard. Because I wish I was 60 miles, but I already booked flight. Hell, we might even drive. I know we're going to be doing a lot of driving there. I bought my tickets already. My wife is coming along, so I'm very excited to see some of the European airplanes come in, and I'm looking forward to the Pipistrel Panthera and one more aircraft. So the last time I spoke to Airplane Factory, they're currently working on the prototype of the Sling 4 with the 915 engine, and they already gave me the stat sheets, okay, of what they expect the performance to be. Now, I'm not going to be sharing that with you guys because I don't want to put stuff out there that's not technically out there yet. So they told me that most likely, I'm just going to go through the chat box one more time and see if there are any questions. And please, we have about 10 minutes more, actually 2 minutes. It's 10:28. I want it to be an hour on this. If you have any questions for me about anything relating airplanes or this channel, you can ask me right now. Okay, let me go through the questions. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, great. Keegan, you are doing a fabulous job. I should just have you as my handyman. You're already answering a lot of these questions. For Flamestorm, do you need a degree for regional airlines? Someone has asked a question similar to this before. Listen, to become a pilot, the only degree you need is your pilot license for the most part. I don't think you're required to have any type of academic achievement in terms of like having to go to school or the traditional college to get a degree in something. The only degree you need is your pilot license, and that allows you to fly. Okay, where are you located in Georgia? So for my own safety reasons, I'm in Atlanta. That's all you need to know. If you want to meet in person, just hit me up. But I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. And if you're close by, we can definitely meet up and do something. Okay. Go for. Okay, I can't read this. How did your written exam go? Okay, to show you something. So before I took my written exam, before and after, so preparing for my written exam, thank God I have such a brilliant wife because she helped me through this. Look at this. These are still my stacks of index cards, and I will definitely recommend this to anyone who is looking to start their training or who are currently in the middle of their training and doing their exams. So part of your training, you're gonna go through a written exam, and then you're gonna have a check ride, which is gonna be verbal questions and answers, and also flying. But for your written exam, I would download an app. I forgot what the app is called. I'll post it on the Patreon's page. There's an app that I used a lot just to practice multiple choice questions. And remember, your written exam is mostly multiple choice. You don't have to like do any complex answers, but get to the index cards. They will help you a lot. Okay, so that's for the person who asked for the written exam. And I did well. I think I got a 80 something or 90 on my written exam. Okay. Be a commercial. Trey Cooper asked, what do you think about medium-sized wind turbines flying at 70 knots powering planes? I'm not sure what that question is. If you can please be more specific with the question, Trey, that would help me out a lot. So someone says like you're speaking, you can get CFI. Honestly, believe it or not, recently I have been contemplating actually getting a CFI uh, rating. And for me, again, it's not going commercial. It's because I enjoy teaching. I enjoy sharing my love for aviation and airplanes. So I don't think it would be a bad thing if I actually became a CFI legally. So I am definitely considering it, and we'll see if I go through with it. But the next rating that I'm looking to get is my IFR rating. After that, then everything else. Let me see. Any more questions here before I head out? Issues. So Flamestorm materials you can study. Honestly, there's a lot of materials that are free online. Um, Believe it or not, Flamestorm, the best thing you can do before you start your training is to talk to another pilot. If you know anyone, and you can find pilots all over. If you go to a flight school or an airstrip where there's a lot of flight school, chances are if you make friends there or whatever, you can find pilots. And the best thing you can do for yourself is talk to another pilot, just kind of pick their brains. And then also, once you jump into your training, a good thing you can do for yourself is have a pilot friend. Uh, and they'll guide you, especially during your training. If you're having challenges, which they will come, you're going to have challenges during your training. You want to talk to another pilot, or if you run into issues with the school more specifically, uh, pilots who have been through the training can tell you what is right or what is wrong. If you feel like a school is taking you for the run, so it's good to talk to a pilot. But in terms of materials, there's a lot of materials online. Get the Blue Book and the ACS. Those are the first things I would recommend you to get. Aviation lover, I appreciate you watching and sharing my content, and thank you all of you guys who have been watching. And please, honestly, like, you guys encouraged me to make this video. Again, this channel was not a thing for me until I started seeing the viewership, and it encouraged me to make more videos. So I do appreciate that, and I hope that I'm able to help more people get into this craft if they choose to. And last question. Okay, so that is it. I want to thank you all once again. I really, really appreciate you guys spending time with me. And again, please do go check out my Patreon's page. The link is on my last video, or you can just go to patreon.com/MojoGrip. All right, you guys check it out. Again, you don't have to contribute anything. You guys are already doing more than enough watching my videos and sharing my videos and commenting and asking questions. So that alone is good enough for me. But if you do feel inclined, your dollar goes a long way to help me make better videos in the future. Okay, so I am going to close this session, and I will be making more live videos moving forward. Hopefully I can get something done during the day so I don't have to use this bright ass light on my face. But you guys, thanks for spending time with me, and I will catch you on my next live stream. And look out for the video that I'm dropping on Sunday. I'm actually going on a trip with my wife this weekend, so that video will be a hassle for me, but I have to get it done. But thank you guys so much. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your night, and I will catch you on the next video. Peace.